It feels like everywhere you turn, someone's got advice for you, right?
Yeah.
Like how to live a better life, work smarter, find the perfect partner.
Hmm.
But how do you actually know what to trust? Especially when we're talking about something as big as, like, finding true joy.
Yeah, I get that. It can be so overwhelming. I mean, there's just so much information out there these days. How do you sort through it all?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into today. A system of knowledge that claims to offer a path to lasting joy. The Vedas. These ancient Indian texts, they've been passed down for centuries, and they claim to reveal these timeless truths about being human, about the human experience.
What's really interesting about the Vedas is they come at knowledge from a completely different angle than, let's say, modern science. You know how science is always changing? The Vedas claim to be the opposite, unchanging, a revelation of eternal principles.
Well, that's a pretty bold claim. I mean, just think about it. The technology we use today, it would have been unimaginable a few decades ago.
Yeah.
So how can any system of knowledge say it's relevant across, such a huge span of time?
It's a fair question. And it brings us to the big challenge of our deep dive today. How can we actually figure out if this ancient wisdom is authentic? How can we be sure that the knowledge in the Vedas is like the real deal? And also, how can we be sure that it still applies to us today?
Yeah, that's what I'm here to find out.
Yeah.
So where do we even start? I mean, how do you even approach something that says it's beyond, like, our normal ways of knowing?
Well, the Vedas themselves actually give us some clues. They say it's really important to test the knowledge, not to just accept anything blindly. It's like that saying, trust but verify.
Okay, I like that. So it's not about blind faith. We have to use our brains here, right? So what kind of tests are we talking about?
The Vedas talk about 3 key tests for figuring out if spiritual knowledge is authentic. Think of these tests as filters. They help us separate the real from the fake.
Filters, I'm listening. Tell me about test number 1.
All right, so the first test, it looks at the source of the knowledge. Ask yourself, where is this knowledge coming from? Is this teacher saying they came up with it? Or are they pointing back to a lineage, a tradition that goes all the way back to the Vedas?
So it's about humility, right?
Bet.
Admitting that true wisdom is bigger than any one person's ego.
Exactly. True Vedic knowledge, it doesn't promote gurus or, individual personalities. It always points back to the Vedas as the ultimate source.
That makes sense. It's like before you take someone's advice, you check their credentials.
Well,
Okay, so test 1, check the source. What about test 2?
Okay, test 2 is all about how the knowledge gets passed down. The Vedas are clear that you can't just pick this up from a book. It's transmitted through a teacher-student lineage, an unbroken chain, going all the way back to the original revelation.
So it's not just what the knowledge is, but also how it's been, like, preserved and passed on. Why is that so important?
Think of it like learning something really complex, like let's say how to play a musical instrument. Sure, you could read every book and watch every video, but without a good teacher, you're probably going to miss a lot of the nuances, make mistakes.
Yeah, I see your point. You need that direct connection, that knowledge passed down from someone who's really mastered it. Kind of like an apprenticeship where you learn, not just the techniques, but also those subtle things that you can't really put into words.
That's it. The Vedas stress that a qualified teacher is so important to guide the student to a real understanding.
Got it. So test 2, check the lineage. All right, give me test 3.
All right, test 3, this gets us into the tricky area of tradition. So within a Vedic knowledge, there are all these different schools of thought, right? Different ways of interpreting and practicing it. So how do you even begin to navigate all that diversity? How do you choose a path that feels, right for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like walking into a library with a zillion books. Where do you even begin?
The Vedas offer a really simple but powerful guideline. Use your own intelligence. Ask yourself, does this teaching feel right to me? Does it make sense, given my own experience and understanding? Does it address that deep human desire for lasting joy and inner peace?
So it's not about blindly following one specific tradition, but about really using our own judgment. We need to see if the teaching truly lines up with what we really want, our deepest desires, I guess.
Absolutely. The Vedas want us to be active participants in our own learning, to question things, think things through, and choose a path that leads to real fulfillment.
This is fascinating. So we have our 3 tests.
Yeah.
The source, the medium, and the tradition. But how do we actually use these tests? Can you give me a real-world example?
Let's say you come across a teaching, right? And it says it's based on the Vedas. And it promises you, like, instant enlightenment if you do a certain ritual.
That already sounds a little bit fishy, doesn't it?
Yeah, right. So, using our first test, we'd look for proof that this ritual is actually rooted in the Vedic texts. We'd want to see if it's mentioned in the core scriptures, not just something the teacher made up.
And then with test 2, we'd check out the teacher's lineage. See if they can actually trace their teachings back to, like, an unbroken chain that goes all the way to the Vedas.
Yep, exactly. And finally, for test 3, we ask ourselves, does this really resonate with me? Does the idea of instant enlightenment through a ritual feel, I don't know, authentic? Does it fit with what I understand about self-discovery, which is usually a gradual process, right, that leads to lasting joy?
This framework is so helpful. It gives us the power to approach spiritual teachings with, like, respect, but also with a critical mind. It allows us to engage with ancient wisdom, but in a way that makes sense for us today.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's all about finding a path that leads to real change, to a life that's full of joy, purpose, and deep inner peace.
I love that. So we have our 3 tests to guide us. But are there any other, like, hints or insights in the Vedas themselves that can help us on this quest for authentic knowledge?
Oh, absolutely. The Vedas are full of stories, metaphors, teachings that all shed light on the nature of knowledge and how to approach it, for example.
So we've got these 3 tests for checking if Vedic knowledge is authentic, right?
Mhm.
Looking at the source, the
Yeah.
lineage, and then using our own intelligence to see if the teachings really resonate.
Share what we've learned and create an energy that helps everyone grow.
This deep dive has been so enriching. It feels like we've just dipped our toes into this vast ocean of knowledge. But I'm leaving with a sense of hope, a sense of, like, inspiration.
That's wonderful to hear. I hope our listeners will keep exploring the wisdom of the Vedas. It's a journey that can lead to real transformation, to a life full of joy, purpose, and deep inner peace.
And with that, we'll leave you to continue exploring on your own. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep seeking the wisdom that speaks to your heart.